Okay, so I'll keep this topic for last class. Okay, the sustainable and smart cities component. Today, what we'll discuss is daylight as planning and design strategy. Okay, so we have seen in the previous discussions also there are certain things that we need to do um, through planning and architectural measures. Okay, for example, if you remember, there was one in one of the discussions we said uh, HVAC consumes almost more than 50%, okay, 55 to 60% to be precise, or let us take it as a lump sum. About 50% of total energy is consumed by HVAC system. Okay, it's a system, and about 14%, roughly 15% of the energy is consumed by lighting. Okay, so HVAC system is where we take the consultants and their opinion on coming out with more efficient systems that we need for buildings, okay, and for large scale development. We have consultants to do that. Whereas in a daylight perspective, yes, we have consultants for artificial lighting, okay, but we will not be discussing the that side of uh, the spectrum. We will be discussing how natural light can be used in buildings, okay, and how it can be integrated in uh, zoning regulations so that it becomes one of the one of the efficient strategy in reduction or reduction in consumption of energy. Okay, so I thought maybe we'll discuss briefly about this. Of course, we'll not be going in depth on what are the techniques of assessment, all that, but this will give you overall picture of what is daylight and what are the things that impacts daylight in coming into the building, and how do we assess it, and what is the usefulness of bringing daylight into buildings and so on. Okay, so and then probably we'll have this discussion last, that's on sustainable and smart city. What is the difference and how do we differentiate between these two things? Okay, since you did not give any topic, I have opted for this. Okay, right. Yeah, what is the intent of this discussion? I have put it like this: to understand the concepts of daylight and its applicability in planning and design of built environment. Okay, so we will understand a little bit about the science of daylight. Okay, and then we'll see how it can be integrated in the buildings. What do we do to integrate this into the building? And also, if you see from green initiatives, okay, or from energy efficiency perspective, we are talking about 15% of energy, 15% of the energy that will be consumed by buildings. Okay, so if we have a good understanding about this, particularly in design stage, these are very crucial, that has to be decided in the design stage itself. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Before I go into subject, actually, uh, have you guys read about daylight? What is daylight, and anything you know about the subject, and how do you think it will be useful? Hmm. Ah, that's right. True. Apart from that, no. As a subject, have you studied somewhere what is daylight, and how do you use this in buildings and so on and so forth? Not okay. Fine. Actually, there are two three things that we will be discussing, that will give you an overall idea of what is this topic is about, and then mm, uh, and also the scope of the subject as such. Okay. And why are we discussing this subject? Like I told you, limited use of fossil fuel to address the issue of carbon dioxide. We have been seeing the entire topic from the perspective of saving energy, and also from the perspective of taking some sustainable decisions, so that the we don't depend on natural resources. Okay, and our decisions does not, so that it does not impact the environment. Okay, we are making efforts to curtail the issue of carbon dioxide. We have discussed about UHI, we have discussed about passive strategies. Okay, this is one of the primary passive strategies that architects and designers look into, to reduce uh, uh, dependence on natural uh, energy, natural resources. Okay, especially since we have enough daylight in the country, in the world. How do we get it, and how do we make sure that we get constant daylight throughout the building? That's the intent. And also, if you see, um, from environmental perspective also, this will be useful, because we are actually not uh, uh, we are actually not taking out any natural resources in the process. And also, we have discussed this in other topics also. If we save 1 unit of energy, that means we are actually saving 3 times of it, natural resource. So that's why even very small initiative in these lines may help in a bigger perspective, if you look at from the larger context perspective. Okay, and also, yes, of course, we'll be using renewable energy, okay, energy efficient technologies in the process. Okay, so consciously we'll be making energy efficient technologies in the purpose, in the process. And this is what I was trying to hint. Building accounts for about 30 to 40% of primary energy use. Okay, and if of this 30 to 40% of energy, and within this, okay, within this, roughly we said 15% is it goes for lighting. Okay, especially in the commercial sectors or industrial sectors. Okay, so where the consumption is high, and if we make conscious decisions, planning decisions, conscious design decisions, then we'll be in a position to reduce the dependence on artificial lighting, and we can look for natural light. Okay, and this is not a new subject again. This has been dealt, and this has been done. Many new ideas and new initiatives have been brought in. How do we bring in daylight into buildings? This is also, you should keep this in mind. And in fact, in NBC, I think everyone is familiar. There is a special section on lighting, daylighting, and there is a specific requirements mentioned based on the typology of building, uh, uh, based on the location. What is the minimum lighting levels for each typology of building to be achieved when we are designing is already there. And also, a lot of new things have emerged, and new things have been done in this way. And one of the major theme or topic, which where architects work uh, in terms of research, is on daylight. Okay, so how do you bring daylight, and what are the ways in which what are the new ways in which we can try bringing daylight into building, okay? Because it's a free energy, free source, and how do we get it and get into the building? And also, um, on other side, okay, on other side, if you see from the industry perspective, there are so many initiatives and advancement in technological perspective also, where they reduce, okay, consumption of energy by these gadgets and by these lighting fixtures that we have in hand. Okay, so previously, let us assume, let's say 20 years or 30 years back, the kind of light and the kind of installations that we were using is very different from the kind of lighting fixtures that we have in hand today. Okay, these are more efficient, and of course it will keep on improving further. Okay, yeah, that's what I have written here. Cost effective alternative with high luminous efficacy. Efficacy is the performance of luminous, is defined using this word, and closely matches the visual response of human being. That means we are trained, we actually we like to be in natural settings, and our eyes are trained for that. So if we are able to achieve daylight in a given space, and will be more comfortable than artificial light. Okay, so in that way this is also pleasing. And also, if you see from the natural setting itself, okay, so quality and color rendering is very good in natural light, okay, than artificial lighting. Okay, so this may be what is it, there are certain things that we have control on, there are certain things we do not have control on, but the point that I'm trying to highlight is this will help in enhancing or bringing the nature, natural setting into the building. If you actually do correct planning and design and location of openings and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is another benefit why we should do. Okay, and of course, like I said, it will be in a position to create more pleasing environments through daylight, that uh, at free cost. Okay, rather than spending money on artificial lighting and so on and so forth. Okay, and also from the comfort perspective, daylight is also one of the major component that defines comfort. Okay, comfort is actually defined in by three components. One is the heat. Okay, what is the heat that we perceive, what is the temperature that we have in a room. Okay, how much is the body temperature that we feel as a result of whatever we have done. Okay, thermal comfort is one, visual comfort is another one. Visual comfort is nothing but the light. Okay, what we see, how much light do we have, is it sufficient or not sufficient, and how it is comfortable for us. Okay, and other comforts are there, for example sonic environment and so on. But when we define comfort, light is also one of the major component that we take into picture. And also many studies have been done uh, where where poor lighting in office environment had shown negative productions. Okay, less productivity is observed in places where there are where less lightings are there. Okay, inadequate lightings are there, and also mm, the impact and health is also studied. Okay, probably if you have heard of sick building syndrome, we normally associate that with the air quality. Okay, we may have health issues because of poor lighting as well. Okay, there are many studies that have been done in this regard as well. And also, if you see Yes. Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, your question is very very valid. When we say you bring in daylight, okay, and that doesn't mean you put what is it, fancy openings in all the way possible, and then you say that I'm getting daylight, okay. Um Along with light, we are also bringing in heat. That also we should understand. Like you have precisely said, along with light, there comes heat. Okay, and we should be carefully designing what is the required opening sizes, where do we position them, and how do we shade them, uh, and then we, so that we achieve minimum required or the desired level of daylighting in a built environment. Okay, and we should not exceed, we should not be a cause of concern, we should not create a problem for the inhabitants through excessive lighting also. Excessive openings will also bring heat, like you have said it precisely. Okay, and yes, and if we also if we do things, if we keep more openings, it will also add on to the HVAC load, as you said. It's true. But we can design it properly. We can design buildings in such a way that we take care of blocking the excess heat that will come in. Okay, and let us assume if it is a naturally ventilated building, we should be very carefully designing the shading, the cross ventilation of openings. Okay, and at the same time we should be sure enough that these opening sizes that we have determined will bring enough lighting into the environment. Okay, whereas in the other case, in HVAC system, where we don't depend on natural ventilation, right? Here, if we bring in, okay, since we depend on AC, let us put everything glass. Okay, that will have a implication on the HVAC system, the ACs, the chiller systems. Okay, so the buildings has to be carefully designed for that. Appropriate shading materials, appropriate use of glass, the quality of glass itself. Okay, all that has to be taken care when we do that. And if you see our own building, the SPAV campus itself, we have huge openings. If you see, I don't know, I'll be able to show my cabin or not. It's all glass. You can see the entire cabin is like this. Fine. In fact, it's not only my cabin. The entire structure itself is done this way. But we have huge projections, which protects the direct sunlight coming in. Okay, and we have a different mechanism, very different, unique lure system installed in our campus that blocks direct sunlight coming into the building. Okay. Yes, even after doing all this, there are some issues. That's how we learn. Okay, so yes, when we make huge openings and all, we should be careful, and we should know what are we doing, and right appropriate design measures to be taken, well thought of design measures to be taken, so that we don't end up creating problems. Okay, but particularly in office spaces, we should not create, we should not bring in glare. Okay, at the same time we achieve desired lighting level. And if you remember in CASB uh, rating system, when we are discussing, we took a case in Japan. Okay, and we saw how daylighting was integrated into the office building. Okay, reflected daylights were brought in, not direct. So when we talk about this, we should there are other ways of bringing daylight. That's how we should address this problem. Okay, yeah. And then if you see from other if you compare with the other buildings, most of the non-domestic buildings operate in daytime, and we should, as a planner and as a decision maker, we should be wise enough to use the free natural light that we have, that we get, at least in the daytime. And in fact, I'll be showing how much daylight we have in a year, and how much we can actually capitalize on all that. And also, daylight linked lighting controls are more important than WWR orientation. There's another thing that we should keep in mind. Uh, when we talk about the openings, when you talk about the windows and openings for daylight, it's not only about the size and placement, it's also about how the lighting controls uh, are appropriately selected. Okay, but actually this is not a part of our uh, subject. This is not, I'm not going to talk about this exclusively, but you remember that uh, um, apart from daylight we have to depend on artificial light. Okay, where lighting controls play very important role. Okay, so we should be very careful in selecting appropriate lighting controls as well. For example, in our campus we have auto sensors, lighting sensors, where suppose if I leave, now I have turned on all the lights, but although it is bright, I'm sitting in the opposite direction, so still it is kind of dark, but it's all we have auto sensors here installed. So if I move out of this cabin for 3 minutes, automatically all the lights will shut off. Okay, so these kind of measures also has to be taken along with the daylighting thing that we are talking about conceptually. And also, if you see from literature, I'm talking about the daylight various from various publications that we have in hand. About 20 to 77% of total lighting energy can be saved through daylight. These are huge numbers. Even 20 is big number. Okay, 77 is too big. Okay, that means only for some part of the running time of a building or typology of building, we will be dependent on artificial light. Otherwise, we can run without artificial light. Okay, so that means there is a huge potential for integrating this into daylight into buildings. Okay, and consciously it has to be done so that we make use of the natural free energy that we have in hand. Okay, so we have talked many things about this daylight and so on, but what is this daylight? Okay, it's light is whatever visible light that we see. Okay, just hold up for a second. Again, sorry for the interruption. So we were talking about visible light. Okay, so of the total solar energy that we receive on the surface of the earth, okay, about 40% are of visible radiation. Okay, so from where we actually depend on 40% is visible radiation, and rest are UV and infrared radiations. And we are talking about this and how do we use this visible daylight into the buildings. And of course, if you see, daylighting describes the controlled use of natural light in a building, in and around building. Okay, so there are 2-3 words here, right? This controlled use, like we were discussing, it's not ambitiously creating openings in all the facades that you see. Okay, we should be carefully uh, placing and the size of openings and the placement of openings in an appropriate way, in a controlled way. Okay, so we know that, okay, consciously we are making this, okay, and then we are bringing daylight into the system. It is a practice of placing window or other transparent media and the reflective surfaces so that natural light provides effective internal illumination throughout the day. And there are three components of daylight. Okay, when we say light, we normally talk only one. Okay, whatever we receive from the sun. Okay, that's not the only component that we have. Actually, daylight is described by three components. I have put it up here. Daylight is described as combination of all direct and indirect lighting, okay, originating from the sun. For example, first component is light directly coming from the sun, okay, intense light or directional light. Okay, suppose if we have an opening here, okay, the light that comes directly, or let's say if the sun is somewhere here, the light that comes directly from the sun. The second component of daylight is diffuse light that we get because of the light from the clouds, okay, from the sky that we get. Okay, even let us assume we have tall building here. Okay, the sun is here. That doesn't mean that we don't get light, right? We do get light here as well. Why? Because of the reflectance, because of the cloud covers that we have, all the diffused light. Okay, through the second component of light is diffused light, which is supposed to be more pleasant light that we get. The third component is of course the reflected lights. Okay, so about it is said that it is about 15 or more percent of daylight is actually we get from the reflected surface. For example, this is for example, let's say we get light and it is hitting on the wall surface and it is reflected back. Okay, even this also creates an opportunity for light to we get light through that as well. Okay, so if you remember in when we were discussing about UHI, we said one of the example one of the initiative is cool roof. Okay, cool roof, what it does, or let's say the terrace is painted white so that the light is reflected back. Actually the heat is reflected back. When in that process we also reflect the light back. Okay, so all physical elements that we will encounter will reflect the light back. Okay, and of course of all the total daylight that we get, about 15% of the light comes from the reflected light. So when we talk about daylight, it's not only the light that directly comes from the source, okay, sunlight, or it is actually a combination of reflected light, diffused light and direct light. Okay, keep this in mind. And daylighting is a method by which natural light is brought into the buildings to replace or supplement, okay, artificial lighting. And we use a word called daylight system, a device located near or the opening and in the envelope through which daylighting is brought into system. We actually know only window. Okay, there are other systems of openings and design of openings. This is the entire mechanism is called daylighting system. Window is also a system through which we manage to bring light into the environment. Okay, and when we discuss about daylight, one of the component that normally comes across is daylight factor. Okay, so what is daylight factor is how much natural light we get in a space. For example, if you see the technical word, daylight is a measure of natural light in an interior space, representing the amount of light at a given point in a space relative to simultaneous amount of light daylight available outside. Uh, in a given space, okay, how much daylight that we get, okay, is defined as daylight is defined by daylight factor. So it is a kind of a measurement for how much uh, uh, light, that natural light that we get in a given space on an average. Okay, for example, I think there is another topic where I'll tell you how much light, what is the number of what is the lux level, okay, outside and inside, and how much, what are we talking about. Okay, that's all about daylight. Okay, but when we talk about bringing daylight into building, there are other things that we should keep in mind. Okay, it's not that you just put a window and we expect that we'll get daylight. Okay, daylight is affected by so many parameters. We'll see what are the parameters, okay, that influences daylight, okay, bringing daylight into picture. Of that, the first component is climate. Okay, and in fact, if you see the codes also, for different climatic zone or different location, daylight requirements will vary. Okay, so typology, of course, it varies, but amount of light that we will receive based on climatic condition will vary. Okay, the prevailing climatic conditions of a building site defines the overall preconditions for daylight in a design in terms of sunlight availability, visual comfort, thermal comfort, and energy performance. And also the sky conditions, this is what I was talking about: overcast or clear or partly cloud skies. When we talk about daylight, we actually define the outside conditions in three ways. One is clear sky, okay, that means where the intensity is there is no obstruction, there is no cloud, and we get direct sunlight coming in. Okay, and the second one is overcast sky condition, and the third one is partially clouded conditions. Overcast sky condition is it's like, let us say it's a monsoon season, okay, and the entire sun rays that is reaching earth is blocked, or the side that we are talking about is blocked by these clouds. Okay, and then we assess at that point of time how much daylight we are actually getting into the buildings. And when we do assessment, for example, let us say you are asked to um, uh, assess this building, a particular building, for daylight. Okay, and one of the major thing, one of the things, or one of the criteria is used to define uh, what is the daylight conditions in a building is through overcast sky conditions. We analyze, or we simulate, we try to simulate the buildings, and although we simulate for entire year, or entire different conditions, for daylight we specifically run on overcast sky conditions. Okay, if the conditions are very bad, okay, there's no light coming in, there's no direct light coming in, at that particular point of time, how much light we get in this building, how much light this building brings in. If we are able to achieve required daylighting conditions in overcast sky conditions, then we'll be able to achieve, of course we'll be able to easily achieve daylight requirements in other partly clouded sky conditions or clear sky conditions. Okay, so this is also one of the points that you should keep in mind. Climate plays very important role in defining this. And also, if you see from the Indian scenario, um, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and part of Maharashtra receives almost 3000 to 3200 hours of bright sunshine every year. Okay, so that means, how do we understand this number? It's for example, we have this sorry, I think I will use another pointer. We have 365 days, okay, multiplied by um, yeah, 365 days multiplied by 24 hours, okay. So we get 8760 hours in total, okay. Out of this 876 hours of duration, okay, let us assume half of it, half of it is day and half of it is night. Almost 70% of time we get enough light. 70% of that, half of the time, half of this, let's say 4300 odd hours, which is daytime in an year. Out of 4300 odd hours, up to 3000 to 3200 hours we can extract daylight, okay, based on these location. These are taken from IMD source. We have Indian Meteorological Association, IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, where this kind of informations are available. Daily temperature or monthly temperature or annual and historic data, all for all Indian subcontinent, we can get it from there. This is taken from there, where they have said that where do we, and in fact this is directly there in NBC as well. You can check NBC 2016, where we'll be able to relate this to what I'm discussing. Similarly, if you see in other places, okay, like on an average we have around 2600 to 3000 hours of daylight available throughout the country, and it is our duty as a planner and designer to make sure that we make use of this free energy available with us. And also that's about daylight. I have just highlighted on solar energy that we receive as well, okay. More than 2000 kilowatt hour per meter square every year we received in the places like Rajasthan, Gujarat, and East Bihar, and North West Bengal, and of course, and Northeast states receive slightly lesser solar radiation because of their location and altitude angles that we talk about, right? So this is also, there is a huge potential for using this energy in buildings and in the city planning, okay. So consciously it has to be done. And distributed annual, so I think I have just put this where you can see how much at each different level kilowatt hour. If you remember, kilowatt hour per meter square is what we use for coming out with EPI. If you remember EPI, the unit for measuring EPI is this. What is the total? And if you see how much we get in that area, okay, and what is our EPIs are what? 100 and, let's say maximum 180, 200, 250, that's all, right? But we have solar energy where we can extract or we can depend on this for partially reducing the EPI in total. And of course these lines, when you see, these are called isoplates, where this is the temperature and this is minimum temperature and maximum temperature profile. In this entire area we'll be having that, let's say 45 degree and less. These lines again, okay, it's a 45 degree line. That means maximum temperatures you can observe is 45 degree throughout these isopaths that you see. Yeah, okay, that's one thing. One component, climate is one component that influences daylight, okay. And like we also discussed, when we say daylight, it also includes temperature, okay. So that's why we should carefully determine how much openings and where to place openings and all that, depending on climatic conditions, and it's a major factor. The other factor is latitude, okay. The latitude of the building site determines the solar altitude for a given time of the year. The summer and the winter solar altitude properties for a specific location are important design input for control of direct solar radiation. Latitude will also determine the length of daytime and so on and so forth as well. Okay. Maybe, yeah. Like I said, maybe with increasing altitude, okay, we all know that as we go high, the temperature drops down. In fact, every 100 meters, there's a drop of 1 degree Celsius. Okay, so latitude plays an important role, and when we say when we raise up, and the temperature goes down at the same time, the sun angle varies, and that also impacts daylight requirement. Okay, and if you see this number, yeah, this is also one example. Yeah, I think this is a good example. Let's say solar radiation in other places and solar radiation in northeast part where the altitudes are higher. Okay, so the latitude plays an important role in addition to climate. Based on the location, the amount of daylight that we receive will change accordingly. Okay, yeah. The third thing that we should keep in mind is when we talk about daylight, the factors that influence daylight is the obstructions and reflections on site. Okay, so for example, we have here, there is no these part are directly clear. Okay, and this building is an obstruction for him to view. Okay, similarly, if we have other ways, okay, suppose if you're talking about opening here, okay, this is an obstruction for this opening. Okay, this is a clear view for other things. So obstructions and reflections of the context also plays important role in amount of daylight that we get in the building. External reflections and obstructions from the surrounding elements on buildings will influence the amount of daylight reaching into the interior space. Roof, windows and skylight are generally roof window and skylights are generally less affected by this obstruction, okay, than windows. Okay, we know for obvious reasons, and these things are these are kind of parameters that influences daylight coming into the building. And also, if you see, this is a line for roof, how much light that we can get through roof, and vertical window, how much you get, dormer window, how much you get, all that. Type of window, where do you place, is also important role in defining it. Apart from this, we have seen climate, we have seen the latitude, and we also seen the reflection or the obstructions, that hindrance. Other thing that is important is also the geometry of the building. We have seen this in the energy, from the energy perspective also. If you remember, in all the cases, in all the 4 rating systems that we discussed, when they talk about buildings, okay, geometry is one of the crucial things. What it should be, how is it oriented, okay, what should be the shape, size, all that, profile of geometry, all that is also important in determining. In fact, in the daylight as well, this is also one of the important criteria. The geometry of building influences its capacity to deliver adequate daylight into the interiors. No matter how much glass there is in the facade, it will only be possible to achieve an adequate daylight distribution a few meters. For example, suppose you have a deep room, and even if you keep the entire facade as opening, will not be able to provide lighting in all spaces. Okay, there's a limit based on other things. That's why this is in 2D. We are saying, okay, Can we get light here? We may get, but not adequate. Okay, these are, let's say, daylight deprived areas. Okay, so the opening that you are keeping here, it will have an influence. It will, you will get it to only certain levels. Okay, so that's why 3D geometry also plays an important. There's one example for this to explain it to you. What is this about? For example, the case is of deep buildings, okay, where the floor space is large and one-sided ventilation. Okay, and this is based on simulation to demonstrate how different configuration works. Room dimensions are 4 by 3 meters, 3 meter height, and VT, visual transparent of the that means the transparency is 78% of the light is coming in. Okay, only 22% of the light is blocked by the glass that is there, and reflectance value of the floor and so on is given. Because this is simulation, we should know what is the reflectance we have used in the flooring and wall and ceiling, so that it also adds to the lighting perspective. So if you see in the first case, in first scenario, simulation with 10% glazing to the floor area ratio, 10% glazing to floor area ratio will only achieve 2% daylight factor, a few meter from the facade, and leaves back the room with low light in the rest of the space. This is 10% glazing, okay, and we are able to achieve only 2% daylight. That means only 2% of the area is lit, daylit, okay, using this. Even though average daylight factor in the room is equal to 1.9, the only small is above. Okay, we are able to achieve daylight factor of 2% only in some portion. Okay, but if you see, if the glazing is increased to 30%, okay, you can see from this this is 10% glazing. Okay, this is 30% glazing of this floor area. Okay, and you can see approximately 4.5 meters inside the room we get 2% of daylight. Okay, and in third case, if you make 20%, okay, of floor area, 11 and then the some opening in the roof, okay, we are able to achieve much higher daylight factor than the other mechanism. Okay, so it's not only about the size of openings, it's also about the combination of opening system that we use. Okay, and also to determine or to come out with what is the lux level or what is the daylight factor level that we are expecting and we are desiring to achieve. Okay, also plays an important role here. That's what the geometry of the building is very crucial. And also the other component that is crucial is also the material. Okay, and we have discussed this in UHI point of view as well. We said how we should be carefully selecting right material so that we don't retain the heat for a long time. Okay, in a warm and humid climate or dry climate, and at the same time, if it is a cold climate, we don't lose out the heat quickly. Okay, and the second component from the perspective of thermal, what do you call thermal mass, right? The other component that we discussed is the reflection of light into the environment, thereby adding more UHI, more heat into the environment. Okay, so these are some examples. Maybe you can dwell and you can check how by changing different materials, how the lighting level changes inside a given space. Okay, like I said, Placement of window is important, okay, and where do you orient it and how do you orient it. The orientation of window influences the availability and quality of daylight in indoor environment, okay. So um, uh, generally we say that north light is placing windows in north is better because of the north light that we get. It's all glare free many in many places, okay. So like that, orienting the window in appropriate place is also important, not only from the light perspective but also from the wind, okay. I think we must have some time discussed as well about this as well. Placing window for natural ventilation, okay, appropriate location of window and size of window for enhancing natural ventilation is also important. At the same time, in daylight as well, orienting the buildings in a right, keeping the window in right orientation is also crucial. Okay. The second component that we should be careful about is the transmittance value of the glass. Okay, how much light should actually go into. Okay, the amount of daylight entering in a room is linked to total glazing area of window. Glazing transmittance, the amount of light transmitted through window pane is reduced by number of glass layer it is through it penetrates. So single glass or low E glass or double or triple glazing, so many options are there depending on the required VLT, visual light transmittance, the kind of glass that we require is selected. Okay, so when we talk about window, we talk about orientation of the window, okay, glazing of the window, and the shading. I think this we have discussed in the other dimension as well, where we said how shading is important to cut down the excess heat and excess sunlight coming into the building. Here as well, this is important. For controlling daylight, we need to have some mechanism in hand. Shading is one of the major components that we use. There are many systems of daylighting, probably will not be going into that detail, but you remember that shading plays an important role in defining the quality of light and the amount of light that we will get in. So these are some examples on how efficient solutions can be brought in for daylight. Okay, and also the position. Okay, orientation is one, and position of window also plays an important role. The position of window will influence the distribution of daylight in a room and determines the amount of useful daylight that we have. Okay, and when you talk about daylight, one of the common terminology that you will come across is daylight factor. Now there is a new term that is emerging and people is discussed in literature is useful daylight, useful daylight UDI, useful daylight intensity, UDI. So again, positioning window apart from orientation is important to know how much light, okay, we are getting inside a room. For example, again, this is one example where if you change, okay, if you keep a smaller window, okay, and if you increase the size of the window, okay, and if you put all the window in one side, okay, what happens and how much variation that you'll be able to bring in inside. Okay, this is opening is on 4 sides, so you can see part of opening coming in, daylight coming in from 4 different openings with an average daylight factor of around 6. Okay, and if you keep it on 2 corners, okay, by increasing size, see the average daylight factor has gone down. Okay, and if you keep on only one side, okay, and how it is varying depending on the placement and positioning of this opening as well. Okay, so these are all about how location influences uh, the first we have seen how the uh, context, okay, influences daylight coming into the building, and also the appropriate use and design of this window will also influence daylight requirement, okay. And there are many methods of measuring it, but we will not be going in deep, and will not be discussing it, but just to give a hint that, okay, how do we measure this? Okay, daylight factor is what I said was as the one simple factor. Okay, how much daylight outside, how much daylight inside. So it's a division. It's a factor of how much daylight we are having inside and how much daylight that we are having outside. Okay, and there are other metrics called daylight coefficient, daylight autonomy. Okay, now we're not using it explicitly. Daylight factor we still use it. Daylight factor illuminance, UDI, or sometimes called useful, it's useful daylight illuminance only. Okay, useful daylight illuminance, there's some spelling error here. Then of course we use empirical formula also to calculate how much daylight we get. If you see NBC, there is a problem worked out on how do we calculate daylight using this method. And also now we have a lot of other programming as well, where we can use these programmings to come out with calculating how much daylight we need. There are specific tools as well. You can use instruments to measure it. Okay, for example, there's something called lux meter. Okay, testo lux meter or any lux meter that you can use. It helps in measuring daylight. Okay, what is the lux level at a given point of time can be measured using this. And of course we can use software also to simulate what is the existing environmental conditions, and for that existing environmental conditions how much light that we are getting in. Okay, so but we are not discussing this in depth, okay, because I think it will be too much. But you remember that there are ways of measuring daylight in a building. Okay, one of the most common method is daylight factor, and we use instruments for measuring it. Lux meter is one such instrument, and of course we use softwares like Dialex. There's a software called Dialex, and also there are other softwares. We have discussed this in the last, or I think in the last class, right? Simulation tools. There are so many tools. IES has inbuilt analysis, inbuilt analytical tool for assessing daylight. So similarly, we have specific tools and for simulating all the daylight conditions in a building. Okay, and also for outdoor conditions as well. Outdoor conditions also we can simulate. And I have put two sources for we have talked about solar position, sun path, all that, right? So suppose if you are interested, you can go to these sites and download a specific sun path chart for your location. Okay, and these charts are useful in coming out with what is the appropriate position of appropriate positions for keeping window, and how much shading that we need, and how much daylight that we can get in. Okay, all that can be, all are extracted through this sun path diagram. So if you, let's say if you are looking for a specific latitude and longitude, you can go to this site and then specifically mention the lat long, so we'll get a solar chart. Okay, using that we can do that. And also if you are for the first time hearing what is this, maybe you can go to this site and see, you can do it for yourself. What is this sun path and how much how much it will have an influence on daylight, not only daylight, the other climatic, for example, the temperature, wind, all that. Okay, and most of my discussions I have taken from this book called Daylight, Energy and Indoor Climate. And also, I have not discussed, but I have put a reference here, hmm, where one of the work done by professor in IIT Bombay, Dr. Roniti Bardhan. She has worked on it's a published paper. You can Google it. You will get it. Towards daylight inclusive bylaws. Daylight as an energy saving route for affordable housing in India. It's published by in Energy for Sustainable Development Journal, where she is describing, okay, all these things are there. If you remember, we were discussing the initiatives of BEE, and also we were talking about what government of India has taken, what are the initiatives government of India has taken in towards green initiatives and sustainable initiatives and so on, right? So that time also we said, see, all these ideas are good, all these ideas we have in hand, but ultimately it should reach out to the last person who is taking a decision. For example, let us say architect or a civil engineer or some consultant. Okay, so these ideas should and or let's say for example from the institutional mechanism perspective, we should reach out to the municipalities and the corporation who says who takes a final call, right? So through planning permissions, approval of zoning regulations and so on. So whatever idea that we have, it should actually percolate down to this in the form of policies and building regulations and zoning regulations. Only then will be in a position to will be in a position to bring this idea into reality. Okay, so this is one example where she has tried how this daylight requirements can be achieved in low income housing dwelling units. Okay, what are the planning steps, site planning initiatives that we should take, how buildings has to be designed and so on and so forth. Okay, in fact ECBC also describes this explicitly, where it tells based on the climatic zones, based on the latitudes, what is the appropriate window wall ratio that we should have. Okay, and in fact if you go into the manuals of Griha, they say what is the appropriate VLT as well. VLT, shading angle, shading depth, all that. In fact, this is discussed in the ECBC as well. What should be the appropriate window wall ratio for this particular climate, and what is the shading angle and the depth that we should have for a particular location and latitude and for the latitude for specific latitude. Okay, so at the end of the day, all this idea should go into this in terms of implementing measures. This is one such measure that you can look in for. Okay, yeah, that's it I have for the day. Maybe if you have any clarifications, I'll be more than happy to